My son Trenton shoved my shoulder so abruptly that my chair nearly slid out from under me, the legs scraping across the hardwood like a warning I couldn't quite catch in time. Dad, this seat is for Callista's mother. Get up, he said, not with anger, not even with impatience. Just that quiet, dismissive tone adult children use when they forget you're still a person and not furniture. The room lowered into a stunned silence, broken only by the ticking clock above the mantel and the faint hum of the oven keeping the Christmas roast warm. I tried to stand, but my balance wavered. These days, my body needs half a second more than my pride would like to admit. Before I could lift myself fully, Maribel stepped directly between us. My wife, gentle Maribel, who still saves ribbons from old gift boxes because they might be useful someday, moved with a firmness I hadn't seen since Trenton was a boy. You don't put your hands on your father, she told him, her voice soft but sharp enough to slice through the pine-scented air. Callista looked away, pretending to adjust the tablecloth, while her mother Rowena hovered behind her like royalty denied a throne. And there I stood, my hand gripping the back of the chair I was just told to vacate, feeling the weight of 63 years settle behind my ribs. There's a particular humiliation that comes with age, when the world pretends it no longer needs your dignity, because your hair has thinned and your steps have slowed. I felt the sting of that humiliation spreading through my chest like cold water seeping under a door. I steadied myself, took a slow breath, and spoke quietly, not to cause a scene, not to fight, just to stay whole. If you've lived long enough, I murmured, you know moments like this change something inside you. Then I added, as naturally as if it were part of the memory itself, subscribe, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments how old you are and where you're from. For you, it's just a small thing. But for me, it's the reason I keep telling these stories. No one reacted. Not Trenton, not Callista, not Rowena with her rehearsed holiday smile. But something in the room shifted, like the first crack forming in ice no one realizes is thin. I felt it. Maribel felt it too. And later that night, long after the plates were cleared and the lights were dimmed, I learned that this moment was only the beginning. Because something happened in our house that none of them could hide by morning. After dinner, when everyone drifted into the living room to admire the tree and pretend nothing had happened, I slipped into the kitchen to check the kettle. I didn't need tea. What I needed was a moment where no one could see my hands trembling. Not from anger. From that strange mix of shame and disbelief that settles in a man when he realizes his own son can push him aside as casually as rearranging chairs. I leaned against the counter, listening to the muffled voices in the next room, and tried to steady my breath. The irony wasn't lost on me, 63 years old, and hiding in my own kitchen like a boy who broke a window and hopes no one noticed. The kettle, of course, wasn't even plugged in. I'd forgotten to. That's what age does. You intend one thing and end up standing over an empty socket wondering how long you've been talking to a silent appliance. I couldn't help but huff a laugh, though it came out more tired than amused. If anyone had walked in right then, they'd have found me scolding a cold kettle as if it had betrayed me too. Maribel appeared in the doorway. She didn't speak at first, just studied me with that look only a woman who's shared every winter of your life can give. You're leaning like your hip hurts, she said gently. I straightened too quickly, bumping the drawer handle behind me and nearly sending the cutlery jangling. Hips fine, I muttered, rubbing my elbow instead to pretend that had been the problem. My wife smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile you wear so you don't sigh. I don't like the way he touched you, she whispered. I know, I answered. But let's get through the evening without turning Christmas into a courtroom. Even as I said it, I caught my reflection in the microwave door. Older, smaller somehow, like the push had shrunk me an inch I couldn't get back. And something inside me tightened. I didn't want to be the man who shrinks. Not yet. Not while I can still lift my granddaughter, or change a tire, or remember how to whistle the tune my mother loved. Getting old shouldn't mean surrendering the right to stand tall in your own house. When we returned to the living room, Rowena had already settled herself into my chair, the one by the fireplace, the one with the worn armrest where generations of our family rested elbows during long conversations. She looked perfectly at home, as though she'd been waiting all evening to claim it. Trenton was laughing at something she'd said, completely untroubled. And that laugh, carefree, thoughtless, struck deeper than his shove. I felt the room tilt again, but not from imbalance this time. From clarity. That quiet kind that slips in when you finally stop pretending nothing is wrong. And somewhere in that crowded, warm room filled with Christmas lights and polite conversation, I sensed a truth rising. A truth that wouldn't stay buried by morning, no matter how they tried. The rest of the evening felt like walking through a house I no longer recognized. Everyone chatted, passed plates of cookies, clinked glasses, but every gesture carried a stiffness, as if the whole room was pretending the foundation hadn't shifted an inch. I settled onto the sofa. Well, settled might be generous. My left knee made the same sound the old porch step does after a rainstorm, and I grumbled under my breath. Of course, the only person who heard me was little Fiona, my granddaughter, who whispered, "Grandpa, did your leg just squeak?" I whispered back, "It did, sweetheart. At my age, every part of me comes with sound effects." At least she laughed. But even her laughter couldn't soften what I saw across the room. Trenton was talking animatedly with Rowena, gesturing toward the walls, the ceiling, even the floorboards. I know that look. He used it when he was 12 and wanted a new bicycle, when he was 20 and wanted to borrow money, when he was 30 and wanted help with a down payment. That convinced me while pretending I have a choice expression. And the way Rowena tilted her chin, surveying our home like a property appraiser. It made my stomach tighten. Maribel sat down beside me, smoothing her dress as if quieting her hands would quiet her thoughts. "They're talking about the house," she said under her breath, confirming the dread already creeping up my spine. "What about it?" "I don't know, but they keep glancing at the dining room. Your chair especially. That chair again. You'd think it was the throne of England the way Rowena was eyeing it." I tried to chuckle so Maribel wouldn't see the knot forming in my chest. "Maybe she wants to borrow it," I said. "Though I'd have to warn her. One of the armrests is held together with more prayer than wood." But the truth scraped at me. That chair wasn't just furniture. It was where I read bedtime stories, where I held Trenton after he broke his arm, where I signed the papers that bought this house. Watching someone claim it like a prize, it did something sharp inside me. At one point, I stood to refill the punch bowl, a task that should have taken a minute but felt more like a small expedition, especially after I misjudged the distance to the counter and nearly sent the ladle flying. I caught it midair, barely, earning a chuckle from Callista who muttered, "Careful, Leonardo, we don't need any accidents tonight." I smiled politely, though my jaw tightened. If only she knew how many accidents I'd prevented over the years while raising her husband. When the guests finally began gathering coats, the air shifted again. Trenton clapped me on the shoulder, not hard, but with that same patronizing tone as earlier. "We'll talk tomorrow, Dad. There are some things we need to sort out." "Sort out what?" I asked. He just gave a thin smile. "You'll see." And in that moment, surrounded by garlands, leftover pie, and the fading warmth of Christmas lights, something cold threaded down my spine. By the time I went to bed, I already felt it in my bones. Tomorrow wouldn't bring explanations, only revelations. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I drifted in and out, the way older men do when their thoughts are louder than their heartbeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Trenton's expression from earlier. That strange blend of confidence and secrecy, like a man about to announce something he's rehearsed in the mirror. At one point, around 2:30 in the morning, I shuffled into the hallway to check the thermostat, convinced the cold in my chest was coming from the vents. The thermostat, of course, was perfectly fine. It was just me who wasn't. I ended up making myself a cup of chamomile tea. Well, I tried to. I boiled the water, set the mug down, dropped the tea bag in, and realized I'd forgotten to remove the spoon from inside the mug. The whole thing clanged so loudly, I nearly woke the dead. Never mind Maribel. I muttered, "Great. At this rate, I'll negotiate peace treaties in my sleep, but lose a battle with cutlery." The joke didn't make me laugh, but it made me breathe a little steadier. When morning finally came, the house felt different. Not colder, emptier, somehow. As if the walls knew something before I did. Maribel was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Her fingers were wrapped around the mug like she needed the warmth more than the drink itself. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Didn't even pretend," I replied, lowering myself into the chair across from her. My hip made its usual complaint, and I grumbled, "I swear, if my joints keep up this commentary, I'll start charging admission." Maribel didn't smile this time. She just looked at me, really looked at me, with worry settling into the corners of her eyes. Leonardo, something is wrong, she murmured. I know, but it's not just last night. She hesitated, which wasn't like her. Trenton's been distant for months. And Callista, she barely talks to us unless she needs something. That wasn't news, but hearing her say it out loud made the truth hit harder. It was like the moment a doctor stops circling around an issue and finally says the word you feared. Nothing changes physically, but everything changes emotionally. I keep thinking, she continued softly. Did we do something wrong? Did we raise him to forget us? That question hurt worse than the shove, because I'd asked myself the same thing in the dark, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the table. Once, then again, then again, again, so rapidly the device practically danced across the wood. I reached for it, frowning. Call after call after call, missed, missed, missed. All from Trenton. Why would he call this many times? Maribel whispered. I didn't answer. My thumb hovered above the screen as the number climbed, 32. Then 35. By the time it reached 37 missed calls, my heart was beating harder than when I'd nearly fallen the night before. And standing there in the stillness of that kitchen, with the winter light creeping across the tiles, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever happened last night, this morning was about to demand the truth. I finally answered on the 38th ring, though by then my fingers were trembling so much I nearly activated the flashlight instead. Dad, Dad, listen, something happened, Trenton blurted out before I could say a word. His voice was tight, rushed, the kind of tone he used as a boy when a baseball shattered the neighbor's window. But this wasn't a boy's mistake. This was something heavier. What happened? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my stomach was twisting. He hesitated, long enough to confirm my worst fear. He didn't want to say it. Can you and Mom come over? Please. It's urgent. It had been years since he said please to me. That alone sent a warning through my chest. I told him we'd be there soon, hung up, and immediately dropped the phone, straight into my half-finished bowl of oatmeal. Splattered it everywhere. Shirt, table, even the cat's tail as he wandered by. The cat glared at me like I'd insulted 3 generations of his ancestors. I muttered, relax, Edgar, it's just oats, not boiling oil. But he stomped off anyway, shaking his tail like a royal banner of outrage. Maribel didn't even crack a smile. That's how I knew this was serious. Normally she laughs when I make a fool of myself, sometimes even encourages it. But now she stood still, pale, one hand resting on the counter to steady herself. What did he say? Just that we need to come. Urgently. On the drive over, the car heater decided to wage war on us. First blasting hot air strong enough to dehydrate a cactus, then turning ice cold the moment I adjusted it. I muttered, perfect, the car's having mood swings, and Maribel murmured, it's not the only one. Snow lined the streets, quiet and clean, but my thoughts were anything but calm. Every memory of Trenton flashed through my mind. His first steps, his teenage scowls, the man he became, and the stranger he was last night. I felt like I was driving toward a version of him I didn't recognize. When we pulled up to his house, he was already waiting outside on the porch, pacing, rubbing his hands together. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just stared at us with wide, unsettled eyes, as if he'd seen something he wanted to unsee. Dad, he said the moment I stepped out of the car, we need to talk inside. Trenton, what's going on? He swallowed hard. It's about last night. And about what Rowena told me afterward. The way he said her name, the strain, the dread, it stopped the cold wind more effectively than my coat ever could. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about disrespect at a Christmas table. Something deeper had been brewing long before the push, the chair, or the humiliation. Something that was now ready to surface.
When Trenton ushered us inside, I could tell immediately that the house was in one of its post-holiday disasters. Wrapping paper still clung to the rug, a ribbon hung from the ceiling fan like an exhausted partygoer, and someone had stepped on a gingerbread cookie so thoroughly that it now resembled the outline of a tiny crime scene. Normally, I'd scold him for not cleaning up, but today I didn't even have the energy. Something in his eyes told me the mess on the floor wasn't the real mess we were here to face. He paced the living room, mumbling half sentences, rubbing his temple, then his neck, then his temple again as if trying to restart his own brain. I watched him the way only a mother can, half worried, half irritated, and half wondering why grown children forget that their parents have lived through bigger disasters than a stressful evening. "Trenton," I said gently, "just sit down and talk to us." He didn't sit. He dropped onto the edge of the sofa, bounced once, then sprang right back up like the cushion had insulted him. I I made a mistake," he said. "Last night. A big one." Leonardo stayed quiet beside me, but I felt his hand tighten around mine. That meant more than words ever could. It meant he was bracing for impact. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture, because at my age, if you don't straighten it yourself, gravity will do it for you, and looked our son in the eyes. "Tell us what happened." He swallowed hard. "After you left, Rowena talked to me. She told me," he broke off, pacing again. "She told me things about you too. Things I thought were true at the time." I exchanged a glance with Leonardo. He raised one eyebrow, which in our marriage translates to, "What in the world did that woman come up with now?" "Mom," Trenton continued, "she said you and Dad were hiding things from us. About money. About the house. About your future plans." I almost laughed. Not a happy laugh, one of those tired, incredulous sounds older women make when they've survived too many foolish rumors to be shocked by another. "Trenton, the only thing your father hides is the bag of sugar-free candies he hates, but feels obligated to pretend he likes." My husband muttered, "They taste like chalk dipped in regret," which would have made me smile if the situation weren't so heavy. But our son didn't smile. "She said you were planning to sell the house without telling us. That you two wanted to move away and cut us out." For a moment, I didn't feel 63, I felt ancient. As if betrayal ages a woman faster than birthdays ever could. "Is that what you believed?" I asked softly. He didn't answer. That silence was worse than anything he could have said. I sank into the armchair, suddenly so tired I felt as if all the Christmas lights in the world had gone out at once. "Your father and I have given you everything," I whispered. "Everything we could, even when we had very little. And you believed her over us." He looked at the floor, then at the wall, then at the cookie crumb crime seen anywhere but at me. "Mom, I know. I wasn't thinking clearly." I leaned back, closed my eyes for a moment. Not to cry, tears can be useful, but today they would only cloud what needed clarity. When I opened them again, Leonardo was watching me, waiting for me to speak, because sometimes in marriage the strongest person in the room isn't the louder one. It's the one whose heart's been cracked but still beats steady. "Trenton," I said, steadying my voice, "what else did Rowena tell you last night?" His face paled, his lips pressed together, and he sank onto the sofa as if his spine finally gave up the charade. And that's when I understood. Whatever he was about to say next, it wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was going to change everything we thought we knew about our own son. Trenton sat there on the sofa like a man who'd misplaced his courage and didn't know where to look for it. His hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles were white, and for a moment I thought he might actually wring the truth out of his own fingers. I sat across from him, waiting, the way a mother waits when she knows the next sentence might bruise her heart but needs to be heard anyway. "Rowena told me," he began, then cleared his throat as if swallowing the words first might make them taste better. "She told me you too don't trust us. That you've been keeping us at a distance. That you don't see us as part of your future anymore." I blinked. Slowly. Very slowly. Because sometimes the only way to stop yourself from shouting is to let each breath travel the full length of your body before you respond. "Part of our future?" I repeated. "We changed our future for you. More times than I can count." He squeezed his eyes shut. "I know, Mom. But last night, I was tired, stressed, and she said it all so convincingly." Yes. Convincingly. That woman could sell snow to penguins and convince them it was imported designer ice. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "Trenton, your father and I are many things. Slow with technology, yes. Loud chewers, your father, not me. Stubborn, mostly him. But secretive manipulators? Please. The only thing your father has successfully hidden in 30 years of marriage is where he put the spare house keys." From beside me, Leonardo's voice drifted in dry as winter air, and I still say those keys moved themselves. I smacked his knee lightly. He pretended to wince dramatically, then grinned at me like a boy caught smiling in church. That small moment, just a flicker of humor, gave me the strength to keep going. Trenton, I said, soft but firm, why would you believe such nonsense? He looked up at me with eyes I recognized from his childhood, the same eyes he had the day a neighbor boy told him Leonardo and I were too old to play tag, and he cried because he thought we'd stop loving him when we slowed down. Because he hesitated and his lower lip twitched like he hated the truth even as he spoke it. Because Rowena said she overheard you two talking about leaving, about selling the house, about starting over somewhere else. I stared at him, stunned. Sell the house? Leave? Even Leonardo stopped leaning on the armchair and straightened, a rare moment where his back didn't protest. Shock can do that. My voice dropped. And you believed her? He didn't answer. His silence was a confession all by itself. Suddenly the room felt too small, the walls too close. I rose from the chair, too quickly, apparently, because I bumped my hip on the corner of the side table and nearly sent a decorative snow globe flying. Leonardo gasped like I'd just performed acrobatics, and I snapped, I'm fine. The table attacked me, not the other way around. But inside, I wasn't fine at all. I faced my son. Trenton, your father, and I have lived in that house for over 3 decades. We built our lives there. We buried pets in the backyard. We painted the nursery for you before we even knew if you'd be a boy or a girl. That home isn't a piece on someone's chessboard. It's the heart of our family. He swallowed. Hard. I know. I know that now. But last night, I let Rowena's words get into my head. And why do you think she said them? Leonardo asked quietly, surprising both of us. Trenton looked at him, then away. Because she wants to influence things. With the house. With our family. With decisions that aren't hers to make. A tremor went through my chest, not fear, not anger, but something sharper. Understanding. I sat back down slowly. Trenton, what exactly has she been trying to influence? He hesitated again, but this time the hesitation came with a weight that filled the room. And in his eyes I saw it, a truth he'd been avoiding. A truth that was finally cornering him. When he finally spoke, his voice broke just slightly. Mom, Dad, last night wasn't the first time. She's been trying to push you out of the picture for months. The air went still. Even the house seemed to stop breathing. For a moment, none of us spoke. The word months echoed in my mind like someone had dropped a stone down an empty well. I felt it sink through me, past the ribs, the heart, all the way down to where old fears sleep. Leonardo sat rigid beside me, his brows furrowed so tightly you could have planted seeds between the lines. Months. I finally managed. She's been trying to push us out for months? Trenton rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he's had since childhood whenever he knew he'd disappointed us, usually after breaking something valuable or, once, trying to microwave a fork just to see what would happen. She keeps telling me that you two, slow us down, he said reluctantly, that your house should become part of our future plan, that you're getting older and should transition out of responsibilities. I felt my jaw tighten. Transition out of responsibilities? Leonardo, did you hear that? Apparently we're being transitioned like old office equipment. Leonardo muttered, well, at least office equipment gets a thank you card. But humor only softened the blow for a moment. Trenton kept talking, words tumbling like he just wanted them out of his mouth before they suffocated him. She said you were clinging to the house for no reason. That you were planning things without us. That you intended to make decisions behind our backs. I sank deeper into the sofa cushion. Not dramatically, more like a tired balloon slowly losing air. And you believed her? I didn't want to, he whispered. But she kept insisting she overheard things, and oh please, I cut in. The only thing that woman overhears is her own voice echoing in empty rooms. Leonardo snorted at that, then immediately pretended it was a cough when Trenton glared at him. But I knew he was grateful. Humor is how we've survived every storm, from financial struggles to that time he accidentally shaved off half his eyebrow trimming his sideburns. I leaned forward, folding my hands. Trenton, your father, and I haven't made a single decision without you. We never planned to sell the house. We never planned to move away. And we certainly never planned to transition out of our lives so someone else could feel more comfortable. He swallowed. I know that now. I do. After what happened this morning, his voice broke off, trembling, and he suddenly looked like the boy who used to crawl into our bed after nightmares. What happened? I asked. He hesitated, and then finally, the truth burst out. Callista and Rowena, they were talking about putting their names on your house. I felt something inside me snap so sharply it almost made a sound. Leonardo froze beside me, his fingers tightening on the armrest as if anchoring himself to reality. On our house, my husband said quietly. Too quietly. That tone always frightened me more than shouting ever could. Yes, Trenton said. Rowena told Callista that she deserved security and that the two of you had lived long enough in that place. They said it was time to start preparing for the future and that your house should become ours. The audacity. The sheer arrogance. It hit me like winter wind through an open door. My voice came out steadier than I felt. And how exactly did they plan to accomplish this? Trenton swallowed hard. They told me I should talk to you. Convince you to sign over certain rights. Make it sound like a family decision, not pressure. I closed my eyes. I needed 1 second, just one, to gather myself. But in that second, I accidentally leaned too far back, causing the sofa cushion to slide out a little. I nearly toppled sideways and had to grip the armrest with the reflexes of a startled cat. Leonardo whispered, "Careful, darling," which would have been sweet if he hadn't said it in the same tone he uses for our wobbly porch railing. I studied myself and looked at my son with a calmness I didn't feel. "Trenton," I said, "you need to tell us everything." Every word they said. Every plan they made. He exhaled shakily. "I will. I will tell you everything. But first, there's something you need to see." And the way he said see with dread, with regret, with something close to fear, told me that this wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was about to become a reckoning. Trenton led us down the hallway with the kind of nervous energy usually reserved for people about to confess they dented a borrowed car. His steps were fast, uneven, and he kept glancing back at us as if afraid we'd vanish before he could explain himself. Leonardo walked beside me, shoulders stiff, jaw tight, his silence saying far more than words ever could. When my husband is angry, he doesn't shout, he goes quiet. And that quiet can rattle windows. We stopped outside Trenton's office, the room he calls his study, even though the only studying that happens in there is him Googling how to fix things he ends up calling professionals to repair anyway. He hesitated with his hand on the doorknob, then pushed it open. Inside, the room was a mess of papers, coffee cups, and a plant that had clearly died weeks ago, but was still bravely pretending to be alive. My eyes immediately latched onto the desk, where a stack of documents sat neatly arranged, too neatly, considering the chaos everywhere else. "These," he said quietly, "are what they wanted me to bring to you." Leonardo stepped forward and picked up the top page. His hands trembled, not from age this time, but from something sharper. I watched his eyes move across the words, and as the seconds passed, his back straightened inch by inch until he looked taller than I'd seen him in years. I took the papers from him, and my heart sank. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't complicated. It was a thinly disguised transfer agreement, drafted by someone who clearly thought we were too naive or too old to understand legal language. A document suggesting our home be secured for future family needs, with our names minimized and spaces neatly prepared for Callista and Rowena. My hands shook harder than Leonardo's ever had. "She actually drafted paperwork?" "Yes," Trenton whispered. "Last night, after you left. She even told me what to say to convince you." Convince. Such a polite word for manipulation. Leonardo exhaled slowly, forcing calm into every muscle of his face, though the tips of his ears were turning the dangerous shade of red I recognized from the time he discovered squirrels were stealing peaches from his garden. I sank into the rolling office chair, forgetting, of course, that it rolls. The thing slipped backward under my weight, sending me gliding 2 feet across the floor while I clutched the armrests like a woman on a runaway sled. Trenton gasped. Leonardo lunged forward. And I, dignified, composed, betrayed mother, nearly crashed into the dead plant. "I'm fine," I said, waving a hand while trying to scoot myself back to the desk in tiny, awkward pushes of my heels, just making a dramatic entrance in reverse. But even humor couldn't hide the ache rising inside me. I looked up at my son. "Why did you keep this from us?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Then finally, because I was ashamed. "I didn't want you to know I'd been listening to her, even for a moment." I stared at him, seeing both the man he is and the boy he used to be, mud on his knees, fear in his eyes, heart on his sleeve. "Trenton," I said quietly, "we are your parents. We've seen every version of you. Don't hide behind shame now." He nodded shakily and sank into the chair across from us. "There's more." Of course there was more. There always is when people like Rowena get involved. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope, thick, sealed, with our names written on it in a handwriting I didn't recognize. "She left this for you," he said, "before she left the house this morning. She said it would explain everything." I felt a chill travel down my spine. Letters that explain everything rarely explain anything good. I reached for it slowly. Leonardo placed his hand over mine, studying it, not stopping me, just lending strength the way he always has. Together, we opened the envelope. And what we found inside didn't just explain everything, it changed everything. Inside the envelope was a letter, not handwritten, not personal, not even warm. It was typed, clean, cold, prepared well in advance, as if Rowena had been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal her truth. I unfolded it slowly, and Leonardo leaned beside me, his breath steady but deep, like a man bracing for impact. As I began reading, a strange calm settled over me. The letter wasn't just manipulative, it was shameless. Rowena wrote that she deserved stability in her old age, that we had completed our life cycle in our home, and that the family should consider transitioning the property to the younger generation. She used phrases like responsible reallocation and unnecessary emotional attachment, as if love, memories, and 3 decades of our lives were clutter to be swept aside. I felt my heart beat slow, not in fear, but in understanding. This wasn't simply attempted manipulation. This was entitlement dressed as logic. Leonardo took the letter from my hand halfway through, scanned the rest, then folded it with a precision that felt almost ceremonial. When he placed it on the desk, his voice was steady, not loud, not trembling, just deeply certain. "Trenton," he said, "we've spent our whole lives teaching you what family means. Last night showed us you forgot. But this," he tapped the folded letter, "this shows us she never knew." Our son's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have protected you instead of," I raised my hand gently. "No, you made a mistake. You're human. And you still came to us before any real damage was done." He nodded, but guilt weighed on him like a winter coat soaked through. Leonardo straightened his back, no small feat these days, and gave our son a look I hadn't seen in years. A father's look. Firm, loving, unshakable. "Son," he said, "your mother and I are not guests in your life. And we're certainly not stepping aside so someone else can claim what we built. If someone plans to erase us, they're going to fail." I watched as the truth sank into Trenton, washing through him with something like relief. He whispered, "What do you want me to do?" I stood, smoothing my blouse, letting the strength inside me settle into my bones where it belonged. "First," I said, "you're going to take us home. Second, you're going to tell Callista and Rowena that their plans end today." Leonardo added, "And third, you're going to earn back our trust. Slowly, honestly, and without her influence poisoning your mind again." Trenton nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks, not dramatic, not loud, just real. Then he hugged us both, all at once, like he used to when he was small and afraid of thunderstorms. When we stepped outside, the winter air bit at my cheeks, but it felt refreshing now, almost cleansing. Leonardo held my arm as we walked to the car, not because I needed support, but because he wanted to give it. On the drive home, he reached over and squeezed my hand. "Maribel," he murmured, "you were right. Something was wrong. But we faced it." I squeezed back. "And we're not done facing things yet. But this time, we're doing it together." When we pulled into our driveway, Our house stood there glowing warm under the soft blanket of snow, solid, familiar, ours. Every memory, every laugh, every scar in the wooden floors, still ours. I exhaled, letting the weight of the past 24 hours drift away like warm breath into cold air. Leonardo turned off the engine and smiled at me, tired, proud, and utterly unbroken. "We're still standing," he said. And he was right. We were. We are. And we will be. Because in the end, the house wasn't what needed protecting. The family was. And we had just taken it back.